All right, we got the white pieces again. I think I'll start with e4 once again. Again, there's not everyone plays e5, but it is the most common move. So I'll start with e4. Still a lot of options after knight f3. What opening will actually do? So I will go knight f3. We see knight c6, and I'll go bishop c4. Because it depends. Couple moves here. These are like the two most common. Bishop to c5 and knight f6. I think everyone likes the fried liver after knight f6, but all right, we can't pass up the opportunity to go b4. Get a little Evans Gambit in there. Can't pass up the opportunity. Now, what kind of crazy nonsense is this move all about? Well, to be honest, it's a decoy so that you can set yourself up with c3 with tempo. You bring your queen out to b3 sometimes. Your pawn comes to d4. And you're ready to castle. Thank you kindly. So bishop c5, yeah, we'll definitely play d4 here. Bishop c5 is also very friendly, right? Because when you go here, why am I not going to be super happy? Why am I not going to be super happy with that, right? I'm hitting the bishop with tempo. And when he takes, of course I could take back. Bishop b4 check, but usually after they take, one of the main ideas is actually to just castle. You don't even need to necessarily take it back. Castle so that they don't get a check on you. Because if I'm castling and they're taking here, there's all sorts of stuff. Bishop f7, queen d5 that kind of look good, and I can take this next turn. So I'm going to castle here instead of taking back, even though taking back looks completely fine. I'm hitting the bishop. It is protected, but I just don't like allowing bishop b4 check for black. So this is kind of part of the opening, actually, to play castle here. All right, so he's grabbed all the pawns. So he's technically up 3 pawns here. I have this one waiting, and now I have some options, honestly. I can go queen d5, I can go bishop f7, I can go knight c3, I can even go knight to g5. So we really have to decide. First of all, queen d5 is the main move I would start with because it hits 2 things at once. Queen e7, however, guards both of them at once. So as tempting as this is, queen e7, bishop g5, there's, pawn f6. It's just not really enough. Not really enough. So queen d5 is extremely tempting. But after queen e7, I don't really think I have enough to say, oh, I'm definitely winning. If knight g5, there might be knight e5. Plus, knight h6 still exists for black to defend. So that, to me, is why I would maybe not go with that. Knight g5, definitely tempting. But again, black has a couple moves. Knight h6, still playable. And also knight e5 after this. Against both of those moves, it should be mentioned that I can play knight takes f7. One of these knights will take bishop f7, and then maybe queen d5 or queen h5 and take the bishop. Right? Both of these moves win the bishop. There will be a king on f7. So I can do that. And then on top of all that, I can do it straight away with bishop f7, takes, queen d5 check, king has to move, let's say to e8, and then take on c5. So those are the calculations that I'm looking at here. The other move is like knight c3. And knight c3 is, there's nothing really wrong with knight c3. It's just, okay, black plays d6, and I think I need to use this moment where the bishop is not protected on c5 to my advantage. So That's all I'm thinking about here. I'm probably against this and I'm against this. So the only two moves I'm really considering are bishop takes and knight g5. And I think I would want to leave more pieces on the board versus less, but I'm just trying to decide that. Let's go for bishop f7. So pretty simple tactic when you think about it. Definitely a complicated move to play confidently, but once you see the idea, you know, it does make some sense. Queen d5 check, so obviously this is the follow-up. I'm going to win my piece directly back. So I won one pawn there. I'm definitely going to win this pawn one way or another, so I'm going to win 2 pawns. So I'm going to be down a pawn, but my opponent cannot castle. That's actually worth a lot. You'd be surprised. So we'll see what move he plays here. Against king e8, I'm very interested in queen h5 because these two moves step onto a checking square. So at least I'm taking that with check. Maybe not the biggest difference, but I like to displace the king. And then after queen h5, if g6, well then I go take the bishop, and I like to see that wide open diagonal pointed at the rook. So I'm a fan of inserting queen h5 check, and then going back to take the bishop on c5. So I'll try this. No matter what he does, I'm going to go take the bishop. And this just sets me up for success on that diagonal. Let's take this. Now, queen takes c3. Pressure there. Bishop b2. And also, of course, bishop g5 is going to put a lot of pressure on him with this pin. So, yeah, I'm kind of optimistic here. Nice move, queen f6. I mean, he's trying to eyeball this pawn here. So I have a couple options. Bishop g5 is the first one I think of, just because it's with tempo, hits the queen, develops a piece. Knight takes c3. Boy, does that look tempting, because it kind of looks like, you know, very next move we go in with knight d5. So that also looks very tempting. And the move that I would probably disregard here is queen takes c3. I don't see any real reason why we would want to trade the queens. So I'm looking at knight c3, and I'm looking at bishop g5. I could make a case for pawn to e5, but ultimately I don't really like blocking this diagonal. I feel like this queen is just going to move maybe to e7 or maybe e6. And I'm not so sure that I'm happy after that. So I guess I'm a little scared playing e5 that I might be putting my pawn on a square that my pieces may want to use. It's probably my only thing about e5. But I will consider it for sure. My opponent says that my profile picture says a lot about my speed. He's not wrong. He's not wrong. Bulge. Knight to d5. Boy, that's looking tempting. He's gonna play d6, so I have to keep that in mind. You know, strangely, the more I see e5, the more I like it, but mainly because it stops d6. And I feel like if he doesn't play d6, his pieces can't develop that easily, so That's kind of interesting. I'm gonna go with e5. Kind of counterintuitive. The more I looked at it and just calculated, the more I liked it. But my first instinct was not e5. And I wouldn't be surprised if somehow black has like a, a creative move here that kind of shows why maybe e5 is not as good as I think it is now. Because my instinct was not to play this one. D6 though, I think I'm okay with. D6 is, I mean, hey, I was talking about creative moves. There we go. I will take this though. I just feel like getting an open file for the rook has been a big goal, and we finally achieved that. Yeah, I'll just bring the rook here, I think. Is queen c3 just very good? I was gonna go rook e1, queen takes c3, but rook e1, knight e7, then queen there, and then the rook can move. So maybe queen here first is pretty tough to meet. He's gonna have to go here, and then I don't know, one of these two moves should be, I think, pretty good there. We'll probably hold off on this rook move, but again, counterintuitive. Like, most of the moves that I've done here have felt like they're not bad, but not exactly what I would do as my first instinct. And that's a weird feeling. It's definitely a weird feeling. So that rook's being attacked. Knight f6, queen f6, both possible. I think my next couple moves are just going to be attacking those pieces. Oh, okay. Maybe he didn't. Notice. I mean, to be fair, it is a long. It's a very long diagonal. I'm not going to lie. Rook e1 first does feel like a good move. This one is always available for me. If he goes here, sorry, not there. If he goes here, I was going to point out these moves last time and say, oh, bishop a3. Obviously, after check, he only has one. If he moves the knight, then I was thinking, yeah, now we take and it's a check. So that's a better situation. If king f7, well, that'll be the end of the game, actually. And if king d7, I think queen takes rook is good enough. There are other moves to play, but it's probably sufficient. Takes, bishop takes here, pawn takes back, and, although he's got dangerous knight moves, I should be okay. But nevertheless, I'm going to calculate them. Bishop takes, pawn takes, knight d4. Queen takes b7, guarding that. And although there's knight c2, I mean, I'm up God knows what. What am I ahead in that position? Like, so much, I feel like. So I know that even if I lose a rook, I'll still be up a rook. So that's gotta be more than enough. So I'll take it. It's like if I'm losing the game after winning 2 rooks, then just chalk that up to unlucky. Chalk that up to just unlucky. It is nice that, this defends that. I also have queen there to also lend some support to f3. The nice thing about queen f8 is that it also attacks that. I kind of like that move by him. He's got some ideas here, right? Queen takes a1. not so easy to remedy. I believe that I will try to keep things as simple as possible. So rook is attacked. How can we simplify things the most? Just keep it the most basic. Yeah, there's bishop g5 for sure. Bishop g5, but at this point, I think we're pretty close to a KO. The king can't move anywhere here. If we put the king in check, you can't really block, so you force this. That's a forced move. And the king wants to run that way. Let's say we do another check to g5. Can't go backwards. I mean, I have to think that if the king moves out, that's a good thing for me. Right? Like that. That has to be game over. So I think we got to go with the instincts that bringing the king towards the middle of the chessboard is always a good thing. Always. So we'll start with a check. Up a couple rooks here. We have basically 2 rooks for 1 pawn. Not bad if you ask me. Okay, I think we just continue here with what we were gonna do. That's protected, it's a check, and it stops king f7. So these 2 king moves look like the only ones. Of course, king e5, just big blunder because you're walking into that. So king f5 to me makes the most sense. And now there's an option. Now there's an option. There are a few slightly fancier moves that I'm thinking of here. I mean, moves like f3 come to mind, but to be honest with you, rook d5 was my initial thought. Because rook d5, knight takes d5, queen c8, hits the king, queen e6 is just dead. The king only has 1 legal move there, it's king e5. And after king e5, my queen's here. I could play bishop b2, but I actually think queen captures the bishop is probably a great way to do things. So if I see this and I'm like, okay, that's enough already, that's a good sign. Okay, as long as I have that, if I can calculate something better later, sure, but if I see this and it takes there with the king on e5, my rook's not hanging, I know I'm up a rook and a piece, so that's that should be more than enough. So rook d5 I really like. Don't really see another move that I would play instead of that, so let's go for it. And the thing is, I think he kind of has to find that it's hanging. Because the king doesn't have any moves. Everything's covered. So yeah, he does have to notice that it's hanging. Check. And again, not many moves here. You know, almost the only one would be this. And if we give this check here, you know, there's knight d4. really got me thinking. Do we do that first? Do we take the bishop? Yeah, taking the bishop looks good, but bishop here, knight there. If everybody takes, that's completely winning. Really what I'm thinking of is what if king here? And then knight e4, king e7, and bishop takes, queen will be with a check. So I think that bishop b2 is not a bad way to start. The only final move that really needs calculation is king to f4. King to f4, because then our queen is under attack on c8. And I guess, you know, technically our knight is hanging as well. So bishop b2, king f4, that's the final hurdle. That is the final hurdle, and I think it's fine. We have g3, and if the king takes our knight, then we take the queen with check. And after check, we know that we're winning his queen, and we should be fine. So I'm going to start with this one. Check. A lot of options here, surprisingly. All very, very different, and all very reasonable. If you don't want to lose your queen, and all you're looking at is that, and you don't even notice this, then you're probably going to play knight there. But if you maybe see the queen is hanging with the bishop, you might play king there. But I think it's possible that he just didn't notice that, and so played knight d4 to save his queen. All right. I think we're gonna take. I think this one may be like potentially a stronger move, but I like this one because it's check. Queen takes on g4 afterwards can be played. He's running out of pieces here, and most of the king moves that he's looking at here run into knight e4 check. King d3 doesn't. Might run into other moves, but doesn't blunder the queen. And king e5 also doesn't. His king has really been hanging out in the center of the board here. And unfortunately, those knights are... They're just going to be too tricky. Knight e4 will win the queen, and that should be enough. Oh, actually, king d4. We even take it with a check. Poor guy. Even after winning 2 rooks in this game, that was not an easy game. I mean, takes is, I suppose, technically not as good as this. I don't know. I wonder what the official best move in this position is, you know? It's like the engine, I feel like, would just spit something nasty out. What is the best move? I'm going to go for queen e7. Queen e7. Knight c3, or sorry, king takes d5, knight c3. I guess king there isn't even a move. Yeah, king d4. And knight c3 takes, and rook e1 looks. Because here, let's actually mate. I think knight c3 is clear. I was thinking about this one, but I don't think it does anything. Yeah, it's kind of funny. He disconnected. Even though it's my turn, it's one of those weird situations where I could sit there thinking about my move, and I could just never make a move the rest of this game, and it would automatically win for me. Maybe I should have let that happen. Less stress, you know? Yeah, knight c3 looks correct here. Just getting the rook in. King d6, that's mate. I almost faltered and played queen e7, but I don't think that was good enough. So yeah, earlier in the game, I mean, I think after e5, d6, we missed like queen takes c6 and pawn takes, but I guess I can't say what I did was better, but there's something about leaving the queens on the board in a position where the king's being hunted that looked really appealing to me. Because that long diagonal was really tough to deal with. And if I won the piece there, I think he would have had like 3 pawns or something for the in exchange for the piece. GG. Thank you, Keen 2H, 16 months, tier 3. Anonymous with the gifted sub to Dawn the second. Thank you, Keen. Appreciate it. Got a nice shake, afternoon shake. Holy smokes, Latin and Blonde. Holy smokes. 50 subs from Latin and Blonde. I'm guessing that this game was so impressive. More impressive than what Salty was doing earlier today. Am I right? We did get the Evans in. That's right, Latinum. This was fun. Always like the Evans. D4 takes, castles. This is what's tricky. Takes and bishop takes f7, queen d5, queen h5, and queen c5. And already just an overwhelming position here. Yeah, queen takes f6. My instinct was knight c3, really was, but I have to say e5, I knew it wasn't probably going to be the best move, but I liked it. I mean, it pretty much, to me, it dealt with d6. To me, it dealt with d6. Now, the interesting thing is that my instincts were actually correct here. The move queen takes c6 is the 3rd best move in the position. And pawn takes pawn, even though queen takes knight wins a piece, it's actually not as good as just pawn takes pawn. Crazy enough. Just because this ensures that the king will get hunted by the pieces. Like, all of white's pieces jump out into action. So that's reassuring that, you know, even though it did win a piece, queen c6, I really did feel, and I guess I was correct, that pawn takes pawn was the better move because black's king is in serious trouble here. Got to keep the queens on here. Yeah, I definitely believe that's correct. Yeah, and now rook e1 takes, and everything is falling here. Yeah, queen f6, rook d1, knight g5, king f5. Yeah, there's just so many good moves here. I'm sure that rook d5 was not the best one, so some people were saying, oh, maybe that's a brilliancy. It's like, I don't know if it'll be a brilliancy. It's a good move, but white's position is overwhelming, so I'm sure rook d5 is unnecessary. Yeah, and this is pretty tough to deal with. GG. Glad you liked Evans there, Latinum. What'd you think, Guardian? You were big on the Evans, weren't you? No, Val, I don't think rook d5 will be a brilliancy, but I do think bishop f7 is a brilliancy. This will be a brilliancy for sure, but I don't think rook d5 will be a brilliancy. Let's see. I got a brilliancy this game. Something tells me it was bishop f7 though. Yeah. Every single time. Go brilliancies.